Even before the first note of the medley hit, you knew what series was going on back in the 80s. Welcome back to the AB Scout Project. I'm Krieger, and this is Alpha Bravo, and today we're going to talk about Robotech. Now, Robotech, I actually liked better than Transformers at the time. I will say, mostly because Robotech had a continuous story, and I really got into the characters, and the humans actually mattered. And, while Transformers did have a somewhat cohesive story, and unless it was a one-parter, two-parter, you could pretty much air them out of order, and it really didn't matter. Whereas with Robotech, it did matter, but the network still aired the episodes out of order anyway. So, it wasn't until I was in my early 20s before I actually saw the entire series as it was meant to be seen. So, we're here to talk scale with Robotech. Now, we start with the Valkyrie here, or the Veritech. Now, there's a few different versions, everything from a cheapified little thing to something this is from Macross Plus, but this approximates the current size of the Veritech offerings from Toonami. Toonami did have some that were about this size too. There's a couple a little bit taller too, but one thing about Robotech toys is they're really expensive. So, yeah. So between the ones that I can afford and looking at this unofficial size chart from Tickering that I, pasted in Optimus Prime on, you can see Optimus should be about the bottom of the vents for Jetfire. And we see here that Takatoku is about an inch short, but I think that's good enough. So if you do want a CHUG scale, Jetfire works great. Or if you go on Amazon, if I can get this guy to not be dumb, they actually have a brand new knockoff version. They've got it in this with the red, and they've got it with the yellow. And I bought two reds. But but this is much more playable, not as tendency to break because the Jetfires, kind of show them their age. The back doesn't clip on as well as Jetfire does, but otherwise it is a perfectly acceptable substitute. And I'll show you one thing here. One thing they did upgrade is they actually made the hands able to hold guns on both hands with the new ones. So, pretty neat. So, if you want a CHUG scale Veritech that's actually within your price range, grab these knockoffs off of Amazon or wherever you buy your knockoffs. So, since we're in Macross area, let's go ahead and take a look at the Dest Droids. For the Dest Droids, if a couple of these look familiar from the original MechWarrior, you're right. And that's why MechWarrior got sued and why you don't see them anymore. But you don't see these mechs on MechWarrior anyway. So, yeah, these here are the Matchbox mold but Exo Squad reissue of the 3 of the Dest Droids. And if we look at the scale charts, the Dest Droids should be pretty close to twice the size of Optimus, and they come in well short. So, yeah. There may be some model kits I don't know about that are larger, but of actual toys, I think these are actually the largest of the actual toys. So, you can have them as just, generic robots for your Cybertron scene, because they're about Voyager size. And, they can come in smaller sizes too. But yeah, I think this is the best you're going to do for actual playable toys. And you can usually find these around most vintage toy shops or on eBay for reasonably cheap. Mostly because, like I said, they reissued a bunch of the Matchbox molds with the Exo Squad. Alright, let's go on to the next one. Then there's the crown jewel of Macross, the Macross itself, or the SDF-1 as was known in Robotech. Now, if you want a CHUG scale, it'll probably be bigger than your house. But, yeah, especially since this is supposed to be an aircraft carrier for, like, multiple launches. Yeah. The SDF-1, scale-wise, was huge. And there were several SDF-1 releases that, came close, like the big light-up speaker system. But, that was, close to human size, so, that might be close you can get. This right here is the original Matchbox release, which this is actually the one from my childhood. No, it didn't survive in this great a shape. I had to do some refurbishing on it. I had to redo the booms and re-put on the large lasers, but I still kept my aircraft carriers. I was proud of that. Yeah, it's and when you take these apart now, they have chewed themselves up on the inside just on poor design, unsupported plastic, probably poor plastic. So I don't transform it that much just for that fact that I've seen the inside of it. I know it's slowly eating itself to death. So if you do get a hold of one of these, don't transform it much. As far as getting a CHUG scale SDF-1, good luck. Even if you don't want to buy the speaker system, somebody did post some print files for an SDF-1 on Shapeways. And, you can scale that to as large as you want. Go for it if you want to make an SDF-1 you can live in. Okay, let's take a look at some of the Zundra offerings. Now for the original Zundra, here was the aliens themselves, and looking at the scale chart, Prime should come up to about their chest. Yeah, these come up a little short. In fact, they're about Siege Ironhide size. I actually think they could have made Exodor a little shorter, but anyway. So you might have to do some customizing with some Migos if you want to have some CHUG scale Zundra. But here's as close as the original Matchbox molds got. And again, you can find these pretty cheap at vintage toy shops and online in eBay. But I think this is the best you're going to get that's not a model kit. Alright, let's look at their mecha. Now from the scale chart, the power armor should be well over twice the size of Prime. And looking at the toys we got, yeah, fell a little short. But hey, these actually work pretty good standing side by side with CHUGs. This can be like an Enforcer bot or some generic guard, or if you want to get a hold of a bunch of these and make them into the Sentry robots from some of the G1 episodes. But yeah. Still come up short as far as being actual scale, but as far as looking good side by side with CHUG scale figures, I think it works. Again, you're probably getting MechWarrior flashbacks because this is what they use for the Marauder. This, of course, is the original mold for the officer's battle pod. And you can see by the scale chart, it should be, Prime should come about right below the knee. And you can see here that it's still about 1.5 inches, 2 inches too short. But I believe this is the closest to the actual CHUG scale you're going to get for the battle pod. They may have made smaller, but I think the officer pod looks pretty good fighting the Transformers. So, although the bad news is that this isn't cheap. You won't pick up any of these in a decent condition under $100. If you do, grab it. They did have the regular battle pods as well, but most of them are missing their antenna. And again, they are super expensive to army build. So, if you get one, it's a showpiece, and they're definitely worth it. Alright, let's move on to Southern Cross. Now for Southern Cross, most of the figures were issued at a standard 3 3/4 scale, like the Bioid pilot and the Robotech Master here. So, of course, they're out of scale because they're too large for humans, but for CHUG scale. But just FYI, that's pretty much what you're going to find. I mean, there might be some other offerings out there, some models or something, but as far as toys, I think that's 3 3/4 about all you're going to find. So, go on to the mecha. For the mecha for Southern Cross, there wasn't really much released in the States. I mean, this was our Bioid that we got, which, didn't look anything like it did on screen, but that's what we got. But the good news is, the Bioids are supposed to be about Optimus Prime size. So, the original Bioid is great. So, you find that, it's CHUG scale, it fits with the CHUG. I mean, even if you don't want to have a Robotech shelf, he can still look like some random enforcer or some background generic. So, yeah, the Bioid works. Now, the hover tank, it was supposed to be the same size as the Bioid, same size as Prime, but not quite. Yes, this was the hover tank we got, which, while pretty cool, didn't scale with anything. But that's kind of the theme of the Robotech toys, is that they weren't really scaled to anything. Granted, if you collect the models that don't transform, you can get like strict 1/100, 1/144th. But as far as the toys go, they just went rogue on all the scales. And the bad thing about the hover tank, it doesn't even go to hover tank mode. It only does Gerwalk and Battleoid mode. So, yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So that's pretty much the theme of Robotech toys. Alright. And as far as other Southern Cross Mecha, we really didn't get anything else. I mean, we didn't get the Ajax. We didn't get the Logan. Granted, the hover tank was the main character mecha for the good side, but I'd like to at least have the flying ones. I mean, Macross was all about the flying ones. We couldn't get one flying toy for Southern Cross. Anyway, we'll move on to the new generation. For the new generation humans, I mean, although some of the vehicles came with smaller, non-posable pilots, mostly the releases were 3 3/4. This is the more modern Toonami release, to pretty large from the old release. But this was the original transforming one, so it's pretty impressive that they got it down to close to a 3 3/4 scale. It's still a little over 3 3/4, but not too bad. And then, of course, the original non-transforming was made for 3 3/4 figures. So that's pretty neat. And as far as I was concerned, the Cyclones were probably the coolest mecha of the whole series. I mean, who doesn't like having their own personal mech that's a motorbike that they ride around? So, but anyway, I don't know if there's any actual CHUG scale humans, but this was the kind of humans you got from the new generation line, or Genesis Clamor Most Beta as it was in Japan. Alright, let's take a look at the mecha. Because of how collectible and expensive some of the new stuff is, some of it I don't even take out of the package, like you saw with the Cyclone. Now you'll see with the Beta Fighter here. But as you can see with the Alpha and Beta Fighters, we actually had quite a few size choices. All of them are still too short. Just looking at where the Beta should be next to Optimus Prime here, and you see, yeah, the Beta should be huge. But as far as something you can put side by side with CHUG scale, I mean, you probably have to go with the non-transforming posable ones that you have to replace the hands to be able to hold a gun. And that's about the closest. The next size down, well, the next size down is, yeah, this could be a deluxe, so if you find that size, it's not too bad. But for the alphas, at least, the betas for a lesser extent, you actually got a wider range of choices. Now, as far as the Invid go, the original toys are pretty good size-wise. I don't have any of them because they're expensive and rare. and apparently they like to eat themselves. But there's a lot of people building up STL models for you to be able to print them at home, so I'm excited for a good, complete one of those. And by looking at the scale chart, you can see they're actually pretty reasonably sized when compared with Optimus Prime, so they won't break the bank or be too huge to put on a shelf. So, yeah. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. To sum up, Robotech toys are expensive, hard to find, and, you're going to pay a pretty penny and look a lot to be able to get, something that resembles a collection of the mecha, and then you kind of forget about scale when you're collecting them too. So, yeah. It's still a great series that still holds up to this day. There's a lot of things in it that modern storytellers can learn from. Southern Cross kind of falls off, but the Macross saga and New Generation definitely stand up to the time. I really wish they could have finished the Sentinels and gone on to do the extra books that were written that went in between the regular series. I think those would have been really good, but most Robotech projects go into production hell and never get out. We did get the Shadow Chronicles. It was okay. Didn't completely scratch the itch, but it was okay. I kind of wish they stuck more with the books, but that's just me. Anyway, thanks for joining us today on the AB Scale Project. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, ring that bell, and I'll see y'all later.